this is Boris Schlossberg. Welcome to trading battle number 40. 40 battles already under our belt. So happy to be with you guys today. Today we have a very, very interesting crypto battle between Peter Anthony, who comes to us from UK via China. Hello, Peter. How are you? Good to see you.
Hi.
And
good, thanks. How are you?
The other side of the world from me, I guess both of them are from the other side of the world from me at this point, is Marcus Fetherston, who's coming to us from ACAP. Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Good, thanks. Great to see you too, Boris.
Great. So we are going to focus on crypto. Both of these guys are very well skilled and versed in the market. The market itself, obviously, has had a lot of ups and downs this year, and it's been super interesting, I think, for a reason that perhaps a lot of crypto traders may not necessarily like, which is it's really, really, really tempered its volatility. And my first question to both of you guys, and feel whoever one wants to handle it, go ahead, is what do you think about this incredible compression and volatility that we've seen since the start of the year? Let's start with Marcus, because you're the quant. Talk to me. What do you think of all this vol compression, especially in the big heavyweights like BIT and ETH, which have, I've been joking around. They've been trading like a utility stock for the last couple of days.
Well, look, honestly, from the trading side on like the day-to-day, it's kind of sometimes a welcome change to see things like pitter-patter out a bit and not be really volatile. Because, I think in periods like that, you see great pricing channels established, and trading off the technicals can be really fun at times. So I think, compared to some of the huge moves we've seen in crypto in the last year, some of which, aren't always good on the trading side or on the liquidity farming side, because, the huge moves have liquidated a lot of liquidity farmers and stakers. It can be a welcome change, but I think in the more, fundamental sense, or the technology sense, which really excites me about crypto, I think it's really good because it's during phases like this when you see the hype die down a bit, where you see a lot of the shills sort of get wormed out of the market. I think that's when you start to see great technology get built. I think we saw that back in 2018. We saw a lot of liquidity and market cap leave the market. And then that gives people opportunity for the real technologists to, flourish. It's sort of, it's a bit of a cleansing period in that. So and that depends on how long it lasts. But I think periods like this, whilst daunting, also provide a lot of new opportunities and can be really exciting for traders and long-term investors as well.
Interesting. Well, Peter, what do you think the new opportunities are now? Like in this quiet period where so much consolidation is happening, what do you see on the horizon that looks really promising?
Well, I've been looking at a lot of coins that are sort of quite low down compared to where they've been in the past. Those coins that have already cycled up and had one huge sort of blow off top and come back down and are now bottoming out, are starting to look quite good, where they're sort of perhaps 3 or 4x below their market cap, because they obviously have the potential then to hit the market caps and go way beyond. So I'm looking at the moment at Basic Attention Token, which is looking pretty strong, which is sort of in the advertising and attention industry, as well as that gaming. Gala Gaming has had an incredible run at the end of last year and has come down hard as well, but is now starting to consolidate.
How much is it off the highs? Is it like 80% off the highs?
Gala Gaming is something around that. Basic Attention Token as well. That's kind of probably not quite as much as that, but also sort of fairly low down. So they are both fairly sort of small market caps, obviously, compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they offer much more kind of percentage opportunity, but obviously higher risk with small market caps, etc. And then
what they remind me of? It's interesting because this reminds me of like the COVID stocks, like Zoom, like Peloton, like Docs, that also basically have had like an 80% compression, but are actually good companies. So it's very similar price action after you have to blow off that.
If you look at like the those type of industries when people were locked down, etc., had a lot of interest. I think Gala Gaming is in the play to earn games. There's probably a lot of people who probably sat at home during COVID and wanted to make a bit of money, wanted to have something fun to do. So you can see why gaming, etc., has kind of taken off last year.
Yep. Understood. Marcus, what do you said this is a period where new winners are going to emerge. Just from your read of the industry, what looks promising? Like, where does crypto go next? Where is the narrative going to get hot, do you think, in crypto?
Short answer, I don't know. No idea. And that's the fun thing at this point. I think if you told me when, all the ICOs died out in, early 2018 and, all this liquidity left the market, if you said to me that the real value or technology that's going to be built in crypto is going to be what would later become DeFi, I wouldn't have been able to call that. At the time, people were, talking about everything being blockchain integrated. If you just put blockchain in any company or any ICO, it was bound to look successful. And so picking which one of those would actually be successful was hard. And I certainly didn't think it would be on the finance side in DeFi we'd see all that technology built. So the short question is kind of, I don't know the answer, but I guess my opinion, I think the technology that's going to be great, and this is where I want it to go, is on the finance side. I think DeFi and NFTs as well, NFT technology, which I'm not as versed in, but I think on the finance side, I think in DeFi, we're going to see a lot of liquidations happen, and we're going to see real value sort of get driven to, I think, liquidity pools or into blockchains that, I guess, provide the most, sense of true value. So that's personally my opinion. I think it's going to be on that sort of financial technology side of crypto. We're going to see some more innovation happen in the coming year.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, everybody's waiting for the use case that's going to kind of a breakout use case for DeFi. It'll be interesting to see, what that is, because we're certainly moving closer to just, all sorts of. I mean, one example that people are talking about right now is really interesting. Is, of course, all of you guys are familiar with the disaster of nickel, right? How nickel, the LME had to, cancel all the trades because there was just massive margin squeezes going on here. Excuse me. One of the interesting examples of DeFi, I think, is that you have real-time margining. Like, basically everything that's in crypto can be margined at real time. So the position of the trade instantaneously, and therefore you don't have to worry about settlement risk, which is what LME was worried about when they canceled all those trades. So everybody's saying that could be the next big breakthrough in terms of creating truly instantaneous, fully marginable markets 24/7 across the world without the risk of like this person backing away from his trades and then creating a bunch of busts.
Yeah, it's more realistic. I think that's what we saw with the LME. It was really the whole market was sort of beholden to just a few large holders who, if they were liquidated, would cause a lot of issues for them. And so it's like you literally have, and in crypto, that can't really happen. If you're liquidated, you're liquidated. It's a protocol. It just happens automatically.
Right. When it's not
a real market, but with the LME,
right. When it's not a relationship, when it's a protocol, there is no there's no backdoor relationship. We all know the story there. That's very, it's true. Peter, I wanted to ask you, we're talking about a little bit about NFTs. I know you're involved a lot in NFTs. You want to talk to us a little bit about what's the next thing in that space? What's hot? And where do you see the use case for NFTs going forward?
Actually, so at the moment, a lot of NFT stuff, the hype in the market is crazy because there's obviously lots of people who are, advertising, and you'll see it on Instagram. I bought this NFT for $400 and sold it next week for $460,000.
Yes.
And that's
we've had a few of those on our show. We've had a few of those on our show, and I wanted to strangle them. But yes, yeah absolutely.
So obviously, that's getting people very excited and very hyped up. And a lot of it at the moment is kind of some of it is about the artwork. Some of the artwork is quite cool. For example, Invisible Friends that came out I think last week or the week before. It was pretty much guaranteed to make some good returns. So there's a little bit at the moment about who the artist is, but a lot of it's about utilities and mainly just hype. How big is the Discord? How big is Twitter, etc., which is kind of a really shallow way of looking at it. But ultimately, that's really what's making projects popular, and that's probably what's driving people to buy them, which is not sustainable in my opinion, because as you see now, you've got like Michael Jordan releasing his NFT and everyone trying to sort of release their NFTs. And as that happens, it's going to become saturated really quickly with that. So I think actually the use cases of NFTs further down the line in terms of like legal documents, etc., like that is probably more kind of interesting than what is being used at the moment.
Correct. Like actually the use cases that I hear that really make a lot of sense to me are, and Marcus, please chime in on this, is your college diploma. Okay, your college diploma becomes an NFT. Therefore, it's absolutely impossible. You know, sometimes people lose their diploma, and sometimes you lose your records, whatever. Sort of an inviolable record. Even if you think about it, your passport should really be an NFT. I mean, how many times my kids have lost their Canadian passports 3 times? It's just been a nightmare.
Identity. I think it's, Boris, it's like that's such a big thing with identity because look, from the broker space, just on our side, KYC is a big thing of what we do. And KYC is how many times have you had to onboard with a different broker, a different service, and you've lost photos of, I mean, even having photos of your passport is just so easily hackable and copyable in it.
Right. Or even like, I remember when I was on the brokerage side, we would have legitimate clients from Middle East, but they'd be living like they're not living on a road. They're just like living in a desert. And, part of the KYC was like, we need an address for you. And he was like, I'm next to a sheep, In the meantime, and he was a perfectly legitimate customer with lots of money, but, it was very hard to bring him on. So, yeah,
exactly. KYC it's very first world oriented. And I think having it as an NFT is just so fast and it's a better system. It's not like we're degrading KYC processes at all. It's like making it better. And that's where building technologies around NFTs like that, I think that's what's really going to make like life easier and actually have value. As opposed to a lot of the cartoons coming out, which are cool as well. I own a few of those, but true value being reflected.
But true utility, I think we're all in agreement. True utility in the whole crypto space is really going to be identity driven. It's just, and the really big, I think the person who's going to be the true winner in this is somebody who makes it as easy as Apple Pay. I mean, it has to, like, it's still incredibly difficult for an average human being to onboard into the crypto space. And it needs to be something where, literally they're carrying it on their phone and it's perfectly authenticated in the ether always as who they are, So yeah, that's it. That's definitely the direction. So far, we haven't seen that use case come to life, but I think everybody's in agreement that that's where things are going to go forward. So let's start. Market has been kind of interesting. I just want to get a little bit of a macro view on the market. Maybe Peter, you could run us. You were telling me a little bit beforehand about your view on Bitcoin. Maybe you can run us through the charts, give us an idea of what you see, where the big ones are consolidating, and then we'll try to do a little trading.
Shall I share the screen?
Yes, please. You can share your screen.
Make sure I share the right tab.
It's okay.
Share screen, Chrome tab. Right. Ethereum chart second.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, jumping into Bitcoin. You can see this chart.
Got it. Yes, we see it. We see it.
Cool.
Like
this is Bitcoin on the.
It's either a big upside channel or it's a massive, triple top in the making here.
I mean, I think ultimately that's what's going to happen. So we're looking at this was on the week. This was back 19th of April last year, and then we've kind of been holding these supports really nicely. As long as we're maintaining support above here, and then we got the big news from the Fed coming up this week, which I think is going to have an impact. I think ultimately we're going to see some sort of a continuation either to here, in which case we'll get some huge head and shoulder. And it's all going to potentially end in tears, I think, ultimately down the line. Right. But the crypto is kind of a weird one in that when you get the FOMO and the hype coming in, there's nothing to stop it kind of really absolutely blow coming out the top of this. But fundamentally, it will always have to come back down, which is on my YouTube channel. People find a little hard to understand sometimes when we're up here and I'm saying, we're due to have a cool off.
Well, I don't. I remember
I'm wrong
2 or 3 months ago when we were
trading.
Right, and I remember 2 or 3 months ago when we were trading 60, and everybody was like, 100,000 is a gimme, and clearly it isn't. Where are the levels according to your charts? Where are the support levels? What do you think we have the impulse to the upside that might occur in Bitcoin? And also, I'm just curious. Your view on FOMC and FOMC and Bitcoin. What do you think the reaction will be? Like, why do you think that's going to be positive for Bitcoin?
So they're having a ruling this week in the US inflation. Now, because gold obviously technically, sorry, not gold, Bitcoin is a deflationary asset or doesn't inflate. So basically, it's a great hedge against inflation. And as you saw last year when people had the stimulus checks, and they had to use inflation to provide those stimulus checks, every time that was announced, every time that happened, we saw a surge in the Bitcoin and overall crypto market prices. So it's only, and as well, I think not just because of that, but where it's actually placed in the cycle. We're not like, it's not like it's coming up and we're already at the top. It's coming out and we're actually quite low down compared to where we have been. I also kind of think it kind of coincides quite that this could happen. Obviously, we've had the positive news in Europe this week about environmental aspects, and saying that actually we can still continue to do Bitcoin. I think obviously the things that are happening in Eastern Europe at the moment are not great, but they're having a kind of a positive impact on the crypto market, because countries, or Russia's been told that they can't use international payment systems like SWIFT, so they'll be able to use, looking at using Bitcoin and things like that. So all very much interesting in the play. And then if you look into this, which is on the 4-hour chart, we've been holding this kind of like ascending line. So we're putting in higher lows each time, and every time we're coming back down, you can see that we're aggressively, can't really move my chart around the world. Every time we're coming back down, we're aggressively pumping out. We're getting big green candles each time, showing buying pressure. So I think as long as we're able to kind of break around
35,000, right? It's around 35,000 is sort of where the horizontal support has been.
The lower level here is around 35. If we're holding above 35 or we're breaking above 45, it's going to dictate whether we dump or we pump, basically. Right. Which people don't like to know.
35, 45 is the dump pump range. Interesting. Okay, super. What about you, Marcus? Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Peter. I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Yeah, so that's what's making it, perhaps not that interesting right now, because no one's paying attention to it, and that's.
Right. But that's really valuable. I mean, it's good to know that these are the trigger points, so people who are watching us can actually watch the space and know that if one of the other side gets triggered, that's when you really want to get involved. How about you, Marcus, on the heavyweights? What do you see on any of the major large cap cryptos?
Yeah, look, when it's coming to the top 10, look, I don't always have a lot of opinions on Bitcoin and ETH, but when it comes to things in the top 10, my mind's always been on Luna as a favorite of mine. I think I brought it up last time I was on here. And I think when you see like the market absolutely tanking and everything being a bit of a mess, it's the perfect time to try and find value, I think, because these projects, they're still releasing things. They're still doing things. They're not just sitting idly and watching the price go down. So even if it's a sea of red out there on CoinMarketCap, some assets aren't as red as others. So I think when it comes to this, you can still see great things happening during this period, and it's a time to strike while the iron's hot. And I think people are a bit caught off guard by, the downtrends, and, maybe their positions are being liquidated or a whole range of things. So I think what was really exciting about, Luna during this whole period is, its value was getting down quite low. We were seeing it, if I just switch to the daily, we were seeing it get down to like 40 or 50. Just back in February. Then I think what's really cool here is during this whole downtrend, what we see is the Treasury for Luna comes out saying we're backing UST, which is the Luna stablecoin, with $1 billion Bitcoin reserve. And all of a sudden, this has given a lot more confidence to the space, and the community is really sort of passionate again about it. And it's given that confidence to surge up. So that's the thing, is just because everything's tanking, they're not all tanking at the same rate or the same percentage. Right. You want to see, while everything else is going down, who's responding the best to that? Who's still releasing great updates and doing great things? I think we're talking before about the battle about still waiting for Ethereum to, upgrade to proof of stake and, just waiting on all these updates. But we're seeing other projects in the top 10, whether it's Solana, whether it's Luna, whether it's Avalanche, and they're releasing updates and they're doing a lot of great innovations there. So it's about keeping,
Can you tell us what Luna is all about for those people that are not as knowledgeable about Luna? What's their claim to fame?
Look, I think, and Luna excites me. Like I said before, I'm more into, I think, the financial aspects of, somebody who works in, markets, in liquidity. I think the financial technology aspect of Luna is really exciting. I see what Ethereum is to creating, apps, I see kind of Luna to creating technologies in finance. I think Luna is probably one of the more real world use cases for crypto. And the benefit of that is because it's stablecoin isn't just pegged to USD and potentially backed or not backed, depending on which competitor you're sort of analyzing it against, but it's more based on market principles. So essentially the idea of the Luna stablecoin is that it's algorithmically backed or paired to the value of Luna itself. And when the price disparity gets, unpegged from the US dollar, it gives a lot of arb opportunities for traders to come in and restore parity there. And as people burn or mint new Luna or new UST, it pretty much transfers value between the two. So being algorithmically backed gives it a lot of ways to, I think, avoid regulation that's coming to stablecoins. It avoids a lot of the problems that naturally exist with stablecoins. We've seen, Tether over the years get a lot of criticism for not having a perfect reserve of USD. So it kind of conquers a lot of those problems. But also, we're seeing it adapted into a lot of financial technologies. The Anchor protocol offers probably one of the best stablecoin returns you can get. And I think in an age where banks aren't giving you much interest, to get a high return on a stablecoin is great value to investors as well. And probably
so does Luna run on a protocol, or is it a protocol itself?
It's a protocol itself. So that gives, I guess, a lot of potential for financial apps and great technologies to be built off it. And I think I always kind of, as Peter was saying, it's great to look into the space as you do for NFTs. You look at the Discord and you look at the community. It's great to look at a lot of these and sort of get sort of a gauge of the direction of the coin or the blockchain from what the community is talking about. Even things that are superficial, like how big is the meme culture or something in these Discords and communities. It just shows passion, and that is an underlying use case. It's almost like talking to like the mum and dad investors of stocks. What do they think when all of the all the noise and that is out of the way? What do the everyday people using this think, and why do they like it? Right. So that passion in that community has remained so strong throughout this whole period for a myriad of reasons. So because of that, this huge backing of Bitcoin, and it's pretty much managed to breach its all-time high during this downtrend in the market. It sort of shows that if it can perform like this downtrend,
that's a really good technical sign. Yeah,
exactly.
that's always, they always say that if something is performing well in a bear market, that tends to be going to be the leader when the market turns, because it's it's showing that there's fundamental demand for the product. So let's do our first trade of the day. I guess let's see where you guys stand amongst the majors. So pick our first challenge of the day is to trade one of the heavyweights in crypto. To the long side or to the short side, either way, and just tell us why. Maybe guide us through the charts if you like. So I'll start with Peter. What's your heavyweight pick?
I'm looking at Solana right now,
okay,
and sat over on the 1 minute chart. Hold on.
That's my favorite place. Yes,
it's not usually my favorite place, but for the needs of today, so I'm gonna use.
Where I live.
Yeah. Just add on window, Chrome tab. So looking at Solana on the 1 minute chart we've got here, you can see that we've been moving up pretty aggressive. What am I doing? Moving up fairly aggressively from a little bit of a low recently, but I want to zoom out further. Before I jump into my 1 minute, I want to see what's going on in the kind of like the broader picture, because you never want to jump, even though the 1 minute is telling you something, you never want to jump into a huge trend that's going the wrong way. What you can actually see on the 4 hour Solana chart is we are actually kind of rounding off and starting to approach this orange line, which is a really solid line of support. Yeah. Obviously, if that line falls through, then it could be the end, but that gives me the opportunity to leave quite a tight stop loss. And then look at where I'm heading out of here. So basically, like we had with the Bitcoin chart, we're having lower highs, but maintaining this level here. So we can look and see that if we're able to get up to this level, then we could be about to see a huge trend reversal for Solana, which obviously plays into the Ethereum chart and the Bitcoin chart looking quite similar as well. And in the past, we've just come down. We've seen now we've got this large green candle here, showing that there's kind of good buying happening at just under $8 each time. So I'm now looking to see whether we're going to be able on a shorter time frame to make some trades. So jumping back into the 1 minute, we're looking to basically go long because we're holding support at these lines. And now what I've got is a nice descending wedge forming across here. Not the tidiest because of this high through here.
Are you usually typically a market trader, a market entry trader, or a limit entry trader? Do you sort of, wait for price to come to you, or do you just, if something looks good on a chart, you're going to come in and then maybe scale into a position?
I try to maybe go with limit orders, mainly because it doesn't take so much time to sort of sit. Well, once you kind of identify the pattern, like for example, right now, I'm not, I wouldn't say that this is the perfect trading setup and normally trade it,
right.
But now we're starting to see this breakthrough. If we were looking at like a longer time frame, I'm identifying, like I said, if it's going to go long, it's going to go beyond this point. If it's going to go short, it's going to go beyond this point. That's when I'm looking to get in. So limited trading is what I want to see. But right now we're seeing breaking this level of support here. Sorry, resistance coming up here. So I'm going to put in my long here with Solana.
Now, obviously, this is not your typical way of trading, but I'm actually curious. When you said you're a limit trader, but are you putting in would you typically put in a stop entry? In other words, if you want to be long, do you go above the market, or if you want to be long, do you try to buy underneath the market, let the price come to you in your typical methodology?
So I'm. Let's just look at this. I'll show you the Bitcoin chart. Can you see this now?
We're looking at Solana right now.
Okay, I was going to use Bitcoin because it's conveniently placed. So let's just say, looking at a 4-hour chart, Solana's got this big old pattern here. By using, because we're on a 4-hour, this could take a long period of time to be able to break out of here. So what I'm looking for is perhaps a breakout, a comeback, and a retest. And then that allows me to put in a very tight stop loss. And if it breaks back above a certain point, then I can put my limit order in. The benefit of using that is I don't get greedy. I can just set it and leave it without having to kind of like worry about problems. A lot of people's problems are sort of sitting and staring at the screen all the time, and that's kind of a bit of a dangerous thing. You should have your rules, put them in, and leave it alone.
So would it be accurate to say that you are effectively, once you've studied the pattern and you've identified the pattern you want to trade, you're then just to the long side, and probably the same thing to the short side. You're a retrace trader. In other words, you're looking for an impulse move to confirm your initial thesis, then a little bit of a retrace. That retrace is your entry point, both to the short side and to the long side. Obviously, if you're trying to short, you'd obviously short the spike. If you're trying to get long, you're trying to get long the retrace. Is that correct?
I mean, so for example, with this particular pattern, what we often see is we do see a breakout to the upside, and it can push quite aggressively, but then it can often trickle down, which means you might actually have called the breakout, but you then end up at a position where you're down and you'll get stopped out because of that. But once we have a nice setup like this, this is literally the most premium, in my opinion, most premium to jump in a trade.
And that is what I'm calling a retrace, because that is effectively it's a breakout, tiny retrace. That is it's obviously a higher low, but still a retrace low, and you're buying it at kind of you're buying it at the inflection point. You're trying to buy the inflection point.
Yeah, and if we had say like a shoulder and a I'm not going to do that. This is bad drawing. Maybe have a double top pattern here, and then we had like the neckline here. As soon as we kind of break out of here, we can sometimes get faked out and it can come back. But if it comes back and it struggles to then put in another high up here, it's always going to have to come back. So this again is the ultimate entrance point. I hope that's clear enough.
Interesting. Got it.
Retraces for me have always been the most effective.
Okay. Marcus, what about you? So you went long Luna, right? On your trade, and you're long Solana. Those are the two trades we go. Now, Marcus, how about you? Are you kind of a market entry trader, or do you come in usually limit on your positions?
Kind of depends what sort of move I'm making, to be honest. Like, I think, yeah, if it's more of like a short-term technical trade and I'm really looking at those sort of, pricing channels, I'm going to come in and be doing, limits and stops and trying to sort of enter, as I see that range-bound market react to certain, points and movements, just like Peter was talking about. If it's coming to a more of a long-term fundamental move and that, I'm kind of a bit impatient and I just want to get into the market at a certain point, which probably isn't the right way to do it all the time. But
Right.
yeah, I think something like my Luna trade, I'm diving in because that confidence or what I'm looking at is something I'm looking to sort of, and maybe I might do this on the spot market instead of a CFD. I'd go in on the actual coin. But if it's for a long-term move or long-term confidence, I'm not that precious about it. But obviously, if I'm trading on a CFD or a perp contract or something, it's definitely you got to be picking the right entries to get the most movement out of your trade. So
Right.
depends
Go
on
get the most bang. Get the most bang for your buck.
that's what it is.
Okay, sounds great. I want to shift focus a little bit, and crypto now has become enough of a mature asset that it actually has indices, right? And the next challenge for us, and the next idea for us to sort of think about is, would you trade a crypto index? Would you create your own? How about maybe you guys want to create top 3 coins that you would trade an index? That would be I think a really interesting idea as a challenge for either one of you guys. What do you think, Peter? Like, what if I said to you, I know that there's a crypto index. There's few of them, and if you like those, certainly share those with me. Or you could create a customized idea of your own as your next trade. What would that be?
I mean, in terms of ETFs, indexes, etc., it's great in that it's getting like you said earlier. The entry to the crypto market is still quite a technical and difficult thing for a lot of people, and it puts a lot of people off. So at the moment, it's kind of a way of giving people exposure to crypto markets where they feel like it's perhaps low risk. They've got it's easier for them to get involved, and ultimately, the more people getting involved in crypto, obviously, the better it is for the crypto market as things continue to grow, as we have the network effect, etc. In terms of having looked at it myself and creating them myself, I'll have a look at some trades that we've got down here. So I'm looking at the Crypto 10. Let me just see. Let me share a screen with you.
Is the Crypto 10 the top 10? Is that the one, Marcus? Is that Crypto 10? Is it
Yeah,
the top
so
10?
that's top 10. Yeah, it's pretty much an index pricing off the top 10 by market cap. So it's a great way to generally passively look into taking advantage of that top 10 who usually move in sync. But like I'm saying before, it's like there is still some minor gains and sort of changes in between that as well. Like we saw Luna shoot up from, I think, number 12 to number 7 in the last month. So there's still ways to passively put in those trades as well.
Right. I was going to ask you, does it get when does the index is it continuous? Does it get priced once a day? In other words, let's say a coin goes from 11 to 10 during the day. Is it literally at the moment that it goes, its market cap goes to top 10 in the world, that it is then included in the index? How is it? I'm just because
it's essentially, I think it's refactored daily. But the good thing about that is if something went from 11 to 10, I think the amount that the way that it's sort of weighted in the index wouldn't really be too much different to what was previously number 10. So it's not like, something shoots up and it's just going to disrupt the whole price because of the weighting in it. So yeah, I think it is a much, generally speaking, steadier weight.
Is it a market? Is it a market weighted index? So in other words, the largest cap has the largest percentage component of that index. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so it is market weighted, but there are sort of some caveats to that. So it's not just a large amount of it's just Bitcoin, because then you're pretty much passively trading Bitcoin. So it's market weighted, but not purely. So it can essentially capture greater movement in spots 3 to 10 instead of just being a Bitcoin ETH index, which is an interesting idea. But essentially trying to spread that across the top 10 market cap.
Yeah, essentially, it's another example, by the way, where crypto or DeFi, as you talk about, can be so far advanced of everybody else. Because my whole idea of instantaneous, perpetual, constantly updated index is only possible in crypto, where all prices are continuous 24 hours a day, versus old-fashioned just stock indices, which are always settled based upon exchange-based hours, and therefore have all sorts of lags. I mean, the greatest example of that we've seen is, of course, the Russian index, where a lot of investors, went to sleep on Thursday trying to price their Russian assets and woke up, Friday not having no idea whether they're at zero or any kind of value probably for the next months ahead. That's the kind of a thing that crypto totally avoids by being a continuously pricing asset, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's good too because it's literally just like ETFs in a way. Like I think especially for DeFi, that's where sort of if I was to sort of trade this sort of challenge, it's I think something like DeFi, which there's numerous DeFi protocols and they all work in different ways, and their value is going to be scaling not as obviously there's still the whole crypto market's going to move them, but they sort of work in their own ways. So like something like the DeFi 25 index is good because, I'm not going to look at the top 25 and find the one who's, tanking the most and make moves off that. If I'm on DeFi Pulse or something like that, and I see the total value locked in DeFi is decreasing, or you can literally trade the total value that's locked in DeFi, you can pretty much passively put that into the DeFi index instead of finding, a certain proportion of that movement's in Aave or one of these protocols. Right. And you can just passively or proxy in that trade.
Yeah.
I think that's a really useful one. And that's kind of where I'm sitting in terms of shorting, I think, a DeFi index or something right now. We keep seeing a record high of liquidations in the last 2 months. And I think we're seeing a lot of people that are new to that community that were seeing these great yields in 2021, doing all this yield farming, promising 100, 200, 300, +% returns, who aren't realizing that there is a huge risk of impermanent loss there. It's not like a bank account where you're just getting this percentage return and that's it. If the balance of the two assets you're, essentially putting liquidity into the pool for sort of change, or there's disparity there, then the value for investment isn't going to keep pace with any rises in the underlying assets. So a lot of these people coming in wanting 1,000% yield, not really understanding the fundamentals of it, and now getting burned in the last 2 months. And that's where we're going to see, like I talked about before, true value come out, because a lot of the, newbie sort of liquidity farmers might get pushed out of the market and lose confidence in DeFi. So that's why I'm sort of still thinking there is probably a short move on DeFi over the next few months whilst we see the true protocols, shine through.
Right. That's a really, really interesting speculative idea. So there's like two things that I think are fascinating from this point of view. One is if you're just a passive investor and you certainly don't have the skills or the knowledge or the research to be able to invest into any individual protocol, buying a basket makes imminent sense. It's just like buying an ETF. But conversely, if you're a speculator and you have this thesis that there's going to be a compression, but again, you don't know which of these protocols are really going to blow up the worst, then making a broad basket bet on the whole index is probably an intelligent trade to, on a speculative side as well. So it offers kind of an interesting value to both investors and speculators, specifically because of its diversification. And therefore you don't have to be, you have to be right on any one particular idea to be right about the idea, which is kind of interesting. So I guess, Peter, from your perspective, the top 10 is what you like. Do you want to take a look at the charts? You want to see how that looks to you on the charts, or is there anything else that catches your eye on the indices?
One moment.
Take your time.
Let's have a look. Share screen. Sorry, I'm just trying to work. How not able to share my screen for some reason.
Okay, we'll see if the producer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there we are. I've got it. Share screen. Chrome tab.
That's okay. We're looking at your cool neon sign in the background, anyway. So it's very, very soothing. The House of
like
Crypto.
Nightclub. The nightclub.
I feel exactly. I feel like I don't know if it's a trading room or a nightclub.
Okay, so looking at the crypto 10.
Yeah, crypto 10.
Okay, so this is on the 5-minute chart. We can see that we're having sort of these lower highs getting put in here. And as well as that, kind of like the bottoms, also the lows are sort of starting to balance out. So we could draw, if I knew how to draw a wedge on this. No.
Yeah, use that line. That's fine.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is we're getting lower high, lower high, lower high, and then this last one is likely, as we can see it narrowing towards the bottom, it will make a nice point here. That we are going to have to make a decision at some point. So if it's come out and breaking up to this point here, what I expect is it's going to come back down and retest the top of this wedge, and that's when I'd look to open a buy order with my sort of take profits on the way up. So it's always good to take profits as you go through with like perhaps 2 or 3 take profits, because as soon as you're in decent enough profit, you can always move your stop loss to break even. So if you're taking profits on the way, you're always going to be, not always, but more often than not, taking money out the market rather than holding on for dear life and then losing it as it goes.
Do you have a general formula for how you distribute your take profits? Like, let's say your risk is 1R. At what point do you take your first profit?
Usually it's more looking at the lines of, so if we're buying the market, more looking at my lines of resistance. So if I identify a pattern and I see like a potential a buy that's going to be at least 1-to-1 on where I've got my stop loss, ideally it's going to be more than that, then that's often a trade where I'll enter the market. So my first take profit will be the target price of the chart, but just perhaps slightly below that, so maybe minus 5%. The next one will be around the target price, and then the third one might be at the next line of resistance or support, where if it absolutely flies, then that's where we're going to go to. Obviously, moving once we're sort of hitting take profits, moving stop losses into profit or at least a break even.
Right, trailing them back. So if I were to understand you correctly, essentially your first take profit is going to be at 0.75R. Your second will be at 1R, and then you try to the third piece of the trade. If it's moving your way, then it's open ended until you see something organically on the chart where you would lay it out.
So it depends. Let me just bring up. So
and again, I know it depends on the charts. You don't seem to have you don't trade fixed. You trade organically to the chart. So you obviously you have that
like
very.
If it's a reversal, which is obviously kind of potentially if you've got a reversal pattern like we're seeing at the moment, in my opinion, in the Bitcoin crypto market, that has the potential to run. And double in value. The asset has the potential to double in value. So you've got, a huge upside potential, but ultimately you're always looking. So many times when I got started, you'd up and you'd be looking at like a nice profit. You go away and have your lunch and come back and it's down. So that's where we're kind of ideally consistently profitable by taking profits. You're not gonna. When you win, you're not going to win as big as you could normally win, perhaps, if you left it all open. But you're consistently taking money out of it, which is what trading is about.
Yeah, absolutely. No, understood. What about you, Marcus? Are you a single entry, single exit trader, or do you scale out of your positions?
I'm usually single entry, but on the exits, I'll usually slowly take profits. But again, like I said before, it comes down to how I'm trading. Is it a long-term move? What's the market like? Is it range bound? Am I trying to sort of hit these, great movements between pricing channels? But yeah, generally I like to keep things simple on the entry, and then either scale out losses or scale out, wins as they start to accrue. Because completely agree.
Back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about scaling out losses, because that's not something that we hear often on the show. I'd like to know what you mean by that.
Scaling losses, well, in the same way that you might take, it's the same mentality psychologically. The idea that, you don't want all your eggs in one basket and you want to wait until, this massive profit is reached. In the same way, you might have like a stop loss or something set. But let's say you want to slowly scale out of a position in the negative direction. It's the same mindset. It's, I'm willing to take this whole loss potentially, but, I'd rather be losing smaller amounts in the meantime, lose less overall, depending on how the market goes or how less confident I am in the position. Like I might have a hard stop loss set and, the market's going against me. I'm writing a loss. I still might think my position is right over the long term, but maybe not as right as I was before. Maybe I'm adjusting the take profit, but just adjusting the take profit isn't always like the whole story. I think you do want to minimize loss at the same time too, potentially. Now, I'm not doing that on every trade, But I think the same mindset kind of works on the downside as it does on the upside. You still want to be loss oriented and not too profit oriented, as that's not always the best for your psychology when you're trading.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting approach. Yeah, absolutely. So, we have FOMC coming up tomorrow. The rest of the week could be very, very volatile. Obviously, we're all hoping that the geopolitical situation perhaps settles down. Certainly, risk was very, very much bought today. So far as I'm looking into Asia, it's very quiet. We're really not seeing anything. As a matter of fact, gold is up, which is anti-risk. What do you think, Peter? Like going into the week, where are the best trades for the next few days in terms of if you were to project both technically and fundamentally? What are you looking at?
So hangs in the balance with regards to like a majority of crypto market move with Bitcoin. There's been some big things happening in the news with regards to crypto. So depending on what is the outcome of this Fed meeting this week in the States with regards to inflation, if the news is positive, which is expected to be positive, then we could see Bitcoin shooting towards the upside with an upside target of 45K. Breaking beyond 45K, then I think we're going to be, into a sort of a bull run continuing into the summer, perhaps later on in the year, who even knows. However, if it's bad news, bearing in mind, I think most of the sentiment is thinking that it's going to be quite positive, then we could well see something quite alarming happening in Bitcoin with downside targets, perhaps even into the 20,000s. But
is a 50 basis point hike would be negative for Bitcoin? What would be the kind of a thing that would really rock that market from the FOMC event?
If we're dropping below sort of 35, then Bitcoin's looking quite worrying. But a lot of buying happens around 32K. Sort of Michael Saylor always seems to be able to buy at this level. That's the sort of prices that Elon Musk bought at. Elon Musk this week telling everyone that he wasn't going to sell, had a bit of a push in the market. So around sort of the 30 to 35K is kind of quite a big level of support for Bitcoin, but we've been testing it quite regularly recently. And the more you test a resistance, or the more you test a support, ultimately the more time you knock on that door, eventually it will come down. So we kind of need some positive outlooks. In terms of like actual trades, I've been looking at basic attention token, which is been in a long, let's see if I can pull up a chart, been in a long sort of downtrend, and is now starting to look quite positive. The sort of risks to rewards, we're looking quite positive right now in the whole of the crypto market, because you can take limited risk on the downside compared to what we got on the upside. And as you can see with the basic attention token, this is on the 4 downtrend. And
that looks pretty good. It looks like it's
a nice little breakout there. So as I've already talked about, I'll wait for the breakout to happen perhaps and come back down for a retest. So basic attention token looking very solid with potential upside targets of, how do I do my potential upside target, we could say from current breakout position. There's a potential like 38% trade. This is where I see a price target for that. The next one is Blocktopia, which is a smaller market cap. And as you can see, the downtrend for this has been super aggressive. So but we can start to see that it's starting to have a balance out here. Yes. So I'm paying close attention where we had, we've been having lower highs each time, and then we put in this low, and now we're putting that around the same level. We're flattening off, starting to get very quiet. So once we kind of like break this trend here, this is where we see these kind of like small cap coins. Ones paying attention to absolutely kind of explode. They don't really take much to get going with the small market caps. So I think Blocktopia is side up pick of the week. And kind of a more solid bet in my opinion.
Okay, sounds great. How about you, Marcus? What are you looking at into the close of the week?
Yeah, similar mindset to Peter here. I think, look, regardless of what the outcome is to the FOMC and how Bitcoin and that reacts, I think you're not going to want to be looking at what Bitcoin and ETH are doing from a trading perspective. What you want to find, like Peter's saying, is you want to find smaller cap coins or even other ones in the top 10 that are potentially more reactive to the news on top of Bitcoin, whether that's from a long or short position. Like we look at it, and yeah, some of the top 10 have like a, they have a 1 or 2x potential in terms of, getting back to their market cap. But there are other ones that, if they react to the news, have much further to go, potentially on the upside. So I think Solana was a great long example of that. I think if the news is positive and Bitcoin's going up, I see Solana reacting a lot better in terms of the upside than Bitcoin does, and same with the downside. So if you're going to make a trade, it's not about trading something that has like a larger market cap where the move isn't going to be as big. It's about finding something that's a bit more reactive. I know Peter already traded Solana, so I'm not gonna copy his trade. But I think taking another great blockchain that I guess got hit on the downside by really what it moves in overall crypto or Bitcoin, something like AVAX, which I'm still passionate about, is that's kind of, in my opinion, that's the gaming, that's the metaverse blockchain. I still think something like this, if I was to look at sort of the market cap, reactivity or reflexivity, whatever you want to call it, I think is going to be, I think probably going to react a lot more to the news based on what Bitcoin does. So it's almost like, Bitcoin is the main mover here, but how everything else then proxies in the market value off what Bitcoin does could be a lot greater. So yeah, I'm always long-term bullish on AVAX. So it's not exactly something that I think is going to particularly react specifically to this news, but I think it's like, if you want to see that recovery to the market cap and exceed it, you're probably going to see more value on something like AVAX or an efficiency chain rather than say something like just direct Bitcoin or ETH or something like that. So that's kind of the way I'd be sort of playing it, going off this news or, over the next week or month or so.
Sounds good. So AVAX would be your pick, and Peter's is going to go with Solana. Both of those are kind of interesting into the FOMC. As things stand right now, I don't have my my producer telling me where the positions are. I imagine everything is sort of very, very quiet. Here we go. Here's the board. Everything is basically trading spread a little bit. Luna, your lovely Luna is killing you a little bit.
I decided to triple down and go harder into it. I realized the original trade was too small. So that could completely obliterate me. But like I said before, Boris, when I want to make a trade or get in, I just do it. So it'll either make me or ruin me in this trading battle. Of course, it's not how I'd always trade, but if it's for charity, I'm willing to take the risk when it's not my money.
Exactly. Speaking of that, I want to kind of finish up just talking a little bit about your backstories, and we'll start with Peter, because Peter has a very interesting backstory, because he was trained in the British Army, I believe, right? And one of the questions I had for you earlier, and I wonder if you find any relative value towards, or any kind of experience helping you from your armed forces experience in terms of moving towards trading, because in both situations you're dealing with high stress, high uncertainty situations. One of the things that I find interesting about how you trade is just a very calm, patient approach to the charts. Is this something that you think you learned in the Army, or is this just your own personality type? I'm just curious.
Well, it's an interesting question, and the first time I considered it was earlier when you mentioned it. But obviously I didn't do much in the way of physical trading in the Army. So, right. But as we've talked about before, trading's not particularly technically difficult to learn. Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, learn it quite easily, and they go into it thinking, "Oh, this is going to be easy." And then they, set up a demo account and they kill it, and then a real account, and then they bleed themselves dry.
Right. And they kill it for real. Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, I've done. But to not give up until you can kind of figure something out. Whereas I think a lot of people in anything are quite impatient now. So with trading, they see people making lots of money, think they're going to go in and make lots of money, and they lose lots of money. It puts people off. Right. So having the ability to kind of lose and come back, lose and come back, and eventually,
Right.
hopefully, someone will get over this and win. Yeah, I don't think anyone who's ever got into trading and just been a winner straight away. So I think it's to have the resilience to come back when things are difficult.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. How about you, Marcus? Like in terms of your background, you obviously have a high technology background. You have a huge passion. I think you have a soft spot for crypto precisely because it's so technologically intense as an asset. What do you think was the formative ideas that kind of helped you as a trader?
Yeah, definitely a passion for technology. And in those early days of crypto, it was the ideology side, like, sort of instills the passion for crypto. And I think that passion makes you do these deep dives and look into communities, look into, discords, reading, white papers at, 1 a.m. and things like that. It's that passion for the technology and the underlying ideology, which actually fuels kind of like an idea of investigating crypto, because it really is kind of, it's a rabbit hole. Like you can go down and, have 1,000 tabs open reading about these projects to understand the fundamentals of them. But ironically, it's also, I think, like my job, ironically, and the side of liquidity, especially in DeFi. So look, I've been working in, financial markets for about like 6 years now. And so a lot of what I do is around liquidity pricing in the traditional sense of forex. And so it's kind of funny because DeFi is really just crowdsourced liquidity. It is kind of interesting reading all these protocols like AMMs, Oracle pricing, and all these things, because it's a new way of sourcing pricing that's completely alien to me. You don't need millions of dollars and go to a clearinghouse or something. You have people sharing liquidity between each other. And whilst that is a cool thing, also having that background knowledge on the traditional side really gives me a lot of opportunities, I think, to really question, what's accepted in crypto. Because in crypto, someone puts out something cool and everyone, shills it and everyone gets excited. But I think, if you look at things like AMMs, you look at liquidity pools with impermanent loss. If you look at it from a traditional liquidity perspective, you look at it and say, that might not scale for X, Y, and Z reasons, if you face this issue. And so in that, I think that's where a lot of my moves in the DeFi side of crypto come from, was just like kind of my work day to day. And, I never thought that would actually apply to trading a lot of the time. Like people can trade off liquidity, order books and things like that, but actually making long-term fundamental moves on a coin based on liquidity and how their liquidity protocol functions, like that's a really new thing that I think a lot of people in the traditional sort of liquidity side and financial operations side can actually take advantage of. So that's kind of, I think, where that sort of the way I trade or look long term with DeFi comes from.
Really, really interesting. Wow, super interesting. So let's wrap up by just asking which charity you guys are trading for. Because you guys have both, I'm sure, very valuable charities. Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're trading for, who you would like to donate the money should you guys win?
Sure. So obviously, being ex-military, I've chosen Help for Heroes, a British charity set up during the Afghanistan war veterans, as well as their families who have been injured or killed in combat. They do a lot of great stuff for rehabilitation, both for people with physical and mental injuries, and is obviously close to my heart with my background.
Sure, absolutely. That sounds like a great charity. And what about you, Marcus? What charity are we trading for?
Sure. So I've chosen Remember the Wild. So they're an Australian-based charity. So they focus on education initiatives to help improve Australian wildlife and the environment here. So a lot of work on, information and education about how people can get involved and understand Australian wildlife. And it's a really great charity, I think, that sort of, provides good education across a range of sort of habitats and wildlife that I think a lot of people aren't exposed to in the day to day. They're a favorite of mine.
And Australia, of course, has very unique wildlife because of its continent status. So
exactly, it's an easy one to back when you see a quokka or a kangaroo sort of as the face of it. It's how can you turn money away from a charity that's that cute?
Just don't get on the kangaroo's bad side and start to get punched by it, right?
No, wouldn't dare.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys. This has been a really, really fascinating hour. We just learned a lot about the movements in crypto. I think the market should, as you said, should start to really rocket. I think the key takeaways from Peter is that it's a 35-45 game in Bitcoin, and we either swan dive or moon once we cross those Rubicons. And this could be the week where we could see a lot of stuff. And the other big takeaway, at least for me, was that To trade this right now within this quiet period could be much more productive through the smaller cap coins, who could have a much higher beta than the traditional coins, because Solana seems to be a kind of a universal choice for everybody, because it seems to me, like you guys were saying, it's becoming the third protocol. Like ETH, Bitcoin obviously is the granddaddy of it all. ETH is doing a lot of the application work and all of the transactional stuff. I forgot what is it. What's the one the NFT does? What? Where the NFTs are on?
OpenSea.
OpenSea. Yeah, thank you. OpenSea is the other big platform for NFTs, but Solana is apparently making a pretty serious inroads on that place. And it seems to me like this whole industry reminds me of the car industry at the beginning of the 20th century, where there was like 100 different car manufacturers, and eventually people kind of centralized on 3 or 4, and it's probably going to be 3 or 4 main protocols 5 years down the road that we're all going to be trading, and those are going to be the big winners that we're gonna have probably. Yeah. So that's great. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the show, please subscribe to Trading Battle. See us on YouTube. We're going to have more shows. We have more shows coming up next week for you guys, and actually this week too. I believe, right? We have shows coming up on Thursday. I want to thank both of our guests, Peter and Marcus, for walking us through a very, very interesting market. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to see you guys in the markets. Everybody have a wonderful day. Boris Schlossberg for the Trading Battle, over and out.